Princess Varathix stood in her father's throne room and tried not to show her anger. The Emperor sat on his crystal throne, looking down at her with eyes that showed no sympathy. Around them, the walls gleamed with the light of 3 suns shining through the palace windows. "You will marry the human," her father said. His voice was firm and final. Varathix wanted to argue, but she knew it would do no good. Her father had made his decision. She bowed her head and accepted her fate. The human's name was Connor Blake. He was an ambassador from Earth, a small planet far from the center of the galaxy. Humans had joined the Galactic Union only 15 years ago. They were new and weak compared to the great Zanari Empire. Varathix had seen humans before. They were strange creatures. They had only 2 arms instead of 4. Their skin was soft and pink, not hard and crystalline like proper Zanari skin. They were short, barely reaching a Zanari's shoulder. Everyone in the galaxy knew that humans were weak. They had no claws, no natural armor, and they tired easily. They avoided fights whenever possible and preferred to talk instead of battle. The thought of marrying one made Varathix feel sick. Her father explained his reasons. "The humans control valuable space routes," he said. "They have many colonies and they breed quickly. We need them as friends, not enemies. This marriage will bind them to our empire." "But father, he is just a human," Varathix protested. "I am a warrior princess. I have fought in 3 campaigns. I deserve a mate who can stand beside me in battle." "You will do your duty," the Emperor said. "The ceremony will be in 1 week." Varathix left the throne room with her head high, but inside she felt hollow. Her sisters would laugh at her. Her friends would pity her. She was being married to the weakest species in the galaxy. She met Connor Blake 3 days before the wedding. He came to the palace gardens where she was practicing with her blade. She moved through the combat forms, her forearms flowing in the ancient patterns her mother had taught her. When she finished, she found him watching. He was thin by warrior standards, with brown hair and green eyes. He wore the simple robes of a diplomat. His hands were soft with no calluses from weapon training. "That was beautiful," Connor said in perfect Zanari. His accent was flawless. Varathix was surprised. Most aliens could barely speak basic Zanari. "You speak our language well," she said. "I have studied for 5 years," Connor replied. "Your culture fascinates me. The history, the art, the philosophy. I am honored to join your family." He bowed deeply, showing proper respect. Varathix found herself slightly less angry. At least he had manners. At least he tried. "Tell me about yourself," she said, more out of duty than interest. Connor smiled. "I am a diplomat. I have spent most of my adult life traveling between worlds, helping different species understand each other. Before that, I studied languages and history on Earth. I speak 12 languages now." "Do you know how to fight?" Varathix asked. Connor shook his head. "I believe in solving problems with words, not violence. Fighting should always be the last option." Of course, Varathix thought. A typical human, soft and peaceful. She changed the subject and they talked about other things. Connor was intelligent and well-read. He knew poetry and could discuss military strategy from books he had studied, but it was all theory. He had never held a real weapon. He had never faced a real enemy. The wedding ceremony was grand. Nobles from across the empire attended. The palace was decorated with flowers from 100 worlds. Varathix wore the traditional crystal armor of a Zanari bride. Connor wore formal human clothes mixed with Zanari elements. They stood before the high priest and spoke their vows. Connor's voice was calm and sincere. He promised to honor her, protect her, and stand beside her. Varathix spoke her vows too, but the words felt empty. How could this small, weak human protect her? How could he stand beside her when he could not even fight? After the ceremony, there was a great feast. Connor sat beside her and was polite to everyone. He made conversation with the nobles and asked intelligent questions. Many people seemed charmed by him. Varathix's father looked pleased, but Varathix noticed something else. The royal guards stood near the walls and she could see them smirking. They looked at Connor and whispered to each other. She knew what they were saying. They were mocking her human husband. They were calling him weak. Some called him the paper prince because he seemed as fragile as paper. The weeks after the wedding were strange. Connor moved into her apartments in the palace. He was a quiet presence, always polite and respectful. He never demanded anything. He never complained. He spent his days in the palace library, reading ancient texts. He walked in the meditation gardens. He met with other diplomats and helped solve small disputes. But he never came to the training grounds. He never asked to learn combat. He never tried to prove himself to the warriors. Varathix tried to include him in court life. She brought him to military briefings, but he sat quietly and said nothing. She invited him to strategy sessions, but he only listened. He seemed content to be ignored. At night, they shared the same rooms, but they were like strangers. They talked about small things. The weather, the palace gossip, books they had read, but nothing deep, nothing real. Varathix found herself feeling lonely. She had been married to satisfy politics, and now she was trapped with a husband who seemed more interested in books than in her. 3 months passed. One morning, Varathix was walking in the garden when she saw Connor in a quiet corner. He was moving slowly through a series of poses. His movements were gentle and flowing like a dance. "What are you doing?" she asked. Connor finished his movement and turned to her. "It is called Tai Chi. It is an ancient human practice for health and peace of mind. It helps me think clearly." "It looks very peaceful," Varathix said. "That is the point," Connor replied with a smile. "Peace and balance." Varathix watched him for a moment longer. This was her husband, gentle, peaceful, harmless. She felt a mix of emotions. Part of her appreciated his calm nature. Part of her wished he was stronger, more like a Zanari warrior. That afternoon, Varathix received a coded message from her spy network. She read it in private and her blood went cold. Several noble houses were plotting against her father. They planned to kill the emperor and seize the throne. Assassins were already in the palace. She needed to act quickly. She needed to warn her father and prepare her defenses. But politics in the palace were complicated. She could not just accuse powerful nobles without proof. She needed to be careful. She looked at Connor, who was reading quietly in the corner of their room. Should she tell him? No, she decided. He would only worry. He was a diplomat, not a warrior. This was too dangerous for him. She would handle this herself and keep him safe. Varathix had no idea how wrong she was. Varathix spent the next few days gathering information about the conspiracy. Her spies brought her more details. Duke Sarath was leading the plot. He had bribed palace guards and smuggled weapons into the capital. The assassination would happen during the Festival of Stars, which was only 2 weeks away. She tried to warn her father through proper channels, but the palace bureaucracy moved slowly. Her messages were delayed. Meanwhile, the conspiracy grew stronger. Varathix increased her personal guard. She checked the security around her father's chambers. She made plans for protecting the emperor during the festival, but she felt like she was fighting shadows. The conspirators were clever and well hidden. During this time, she noticed that Connor was acting differently. He asked strange questions about palace security. He wanted to know about guard rotations and emergency procedures. He asked which nobles had access to certain areas of the palace. Varathix assumed he was worried for his own safety. It made sense. He was a human, weak and vulnerable. Of course he would be afraid in a dangerous situation. She tried to reassure him without telling him too much about the real threat. "You are safe," she told him. "I have guards watching our chambers. Nothing will happen to you." Connor looked at her with an odd expression. "I am not worried about myself," he said. "I am worried about you and your father." His concern touched her, but she still thought of him as helpless. What could he do to help? He was just a diplomat. One evening, Varathix's handmaiden Lissa mentioned something strange. "I saw your husband leaving the servants' quarters very late last night," Lissa said. It was past midnight. What was he doing there? Varathix found this odd. Why would Connor be visiting servants in the middle of the night? She decided to investigate. She asked the servants if they had seen her husband. "Oh yes, princess," one of the cooks said. "Master Connor comes to talk with us often. He is very kind. He asks about our families and our work. He treats us with respect, not like most nobles." A guard said, "He asked me about my training. He wanted to know how we protect the palace. He said he wanted to understand our work better." Varathix was confused. Why was Connor spending so much time with the palace staff? She confronted him that night. "Why are you talking to servants and guards?" she asked. "It is unusual behavior." Connor looked up from his book. "In human culture, everyone deserves respect regardless of their rank," he said. "Servants and guards see everything that happens in a palace. They know things that nobles miss. I learn more from talking to them than from attending fancy parties. That is a strange way to think." Varathix said. Perhaps, Connor agreed, but I find it useful. And besides, they are good people. Why should I not befriend them? Varathix did not know what to say. The idea of a noble befriending servants was bizarre to her, but she had to admit it was kind. She found herself respecting Connor a little more, even if she still thought he was naive. Strange things continued to happen in the palace. One guard was found unconscious at his post. He could not remember what happened to him. A weapons vault was opened without authorization, but nothing seemed to be missing. Security cameras stopped working at important times. Varathix knew these were signs of the conspiracy. The assassins were preparing. She intensified her own preparations. She coordinated with the few guards she knew were loyal. She tried again to convince her father to increase security, but he dismissed her concerns. You worry too much, daughter, the Emperor said. No one would dare attack during the Festival of Stars. There will be thousands of witnesses. That is exactly when they will attack, Varathix argued. In the chaos of the celebration, but her father would not listen. He refused to show fear or cancel the festival. Duke Sarath became bolder in court. He questioned the Emperor's decisions openly. Other nobles began to support him. Varathix could see the conspiracy growing, but she felt powerless to stop it. One night, Varathix woke up and found that Connor was not in their bed. She searched the apartments, but he was not there. She went looking through the palace. She finally found him in the training grounds. It was late past midnight. The training area was dark except for a few dim lights. Connor was in the shadows, and at first she could not see what he was doing. Then she saw him move. He was not doing Tai Chi. He was moving through the darkness like a ghost, completely silent, and in his hand was a practice blade. For just a moment she saw him handle the weapon with ease and grace, moving through forms that looked both familiar and strange. Then he noticed her. He immediately set down the blade and smiled. I am sorry, did I wake you? What were you doing? Varathix asked. I could not sleep, Connor said. Sometimes exercise helps. I was just practicing some movements. His explanation made sense, but something felt wrong. The way he had moved, the way he had held that blade, it had not looked like the movements of someone just exercising. It had looked like real training. But when she looked at his face, she saw only her gentle, bookish husband. She decided she must have imagined it. The stress of the conspiracy was making her see things that were not there. Come back to bed, she said. You need rest. They walked back to their chambers together. Varathix did not mention what she had seen, but that image stayed in her mind. Connor moving through the shadows, the blade in his hand, that brief moment when he had looked like something other than a diplomat. The Festival of Stars began. The palace filled with nobles from every corner of the empire. There were ceremonies, feasts, and celebrations. Varathix stayed close to her father. Her loyal guards surrounded them. She watched everyone carefully, looking for signs of threat. Connor asked for a private meeting with her. They went to a quiet room away from the festivities. I know about the conspiracy, Connor said quietly. Varathix was shocked. How do you know? I have been listening, Connor said. Talking to people. Servants hear things. Guards see things. I have been putting the pieces together. Why did you not tell me you knew? Varathix asked. I wanted to be sure first, Connor said. But now I'm certain. Duke Sarath will attack tomorrow during the grand ceremony. You must convince your father to increase security. Varathix felt a strange emotion. Connor had been investigating the conspiracy on his own. He had been trying to protect her father, even though he was just a human diplomat. He cared enough to put himself at risk. I will try to convince him again, she promised. Connor took her hand. There is something I need to ask you. Do you trust me? Varathix looked at her husband. His green eyes were serious. She realized that despite everything, despite thinking he was weak, despite barely knowing him, she did trust him. He had shown himself to be intelligent, kind, and brave in his own way. Yes, she said. I trust you. Good, Connor said. Because tomorrow, no matter what happens, I need you to remember something. Humans have survived wars that you cannot imagine. We are not what you think we are. Varathix did not understand what he meant, but she could see he was serious. The next day would be the grand ceremony. The Emperor would give a speech in the Imperial Plaza. Thousands would attend, and somewhere in that crowd assassins were waiting. Varathix prepared herself for battle. She sharpened her blades. She wore light armor under her ceremonial robes. She positioned her loyal guards carefully. But she did not know that the biggest surprise would not come from the assassins. It would come from her husband. The Imperial Plaza was filled with people. Thousands of nobles had come from across the empire to celebrate the Festival of Stars. The plaza was decorated with lights and flowers. In the sky above, orbital fireworks were ready to launch. The Emperor stood on a raised platform with his family. Varathix stood beside her father, wearing her ceremonial armor. Connor stood behind her as was proper for a consort. He wore formal robes that mixed human and Zanari styles. Security was heavy, but Varathix knew it was not enough. She had tried one last time that morning to convince her father to cancel the ceremony. He had refused. The Emperor would not show fear. Duke Sareth gave a speech honoring the Emperor. His words were beautiful and respectful, but Varathix could hear the mockery hidden beneath them. Other conspirators stood in the crowd, pretending to celebrate while they waited for their moment. The ceremony continued. There were traditional combat demonstrations. Musicians played ancient songs. The crowd cheered and celebrated. Everything seemed normal. Then the sun began to set. The sky turned red and orange. This was the traditional time for the Emperor's speech. He stepped forward to address the crowd. That was when the attack began. It happened fast. 50 conspirators among the guards suddenly turned on their fellow soldiers. Plasma weapons appeared from hidden places. The Emperor's personal guard fell to coordinated fire. Screams filled the plaza as nobles ran for cover or drew their own weapons. Duke Sarath himself led a group of armed men toward the platform. He was smiling. He thought he had already won. Varathix drew her blade and stepped in front of her father. 3 loyal guards stood with her. Against 50 assassins, they had no chance. She knew she was going to die here, but she would die protecting her father. "Get behind me," she told Connor without looking at him. At least she could save her husband. He was innocent in all of this, but Connor did not move behind her. Instead, he stepped forward, standing beside her. "Connor, get back," she shouted. The first assassin reached the platform. He was a large Zanari warrior with a plasma rifle. He aimed at the Emperor. Connor moved. Varathix had never seen anyone move that fast. Connor stepped into the assassin's space, grabbed his arm, and twisted. The Zanari warrior was much larger than Connor, but somehow Connor used the warrior's own strength against him. The rifle fell from the assassin's hands. A moment later, the assassin himself fell unconscious. A plasma bolt flew toward the Emperor. Connor's hand moved in a blur. There was a shimmer in the air. The plasma bolt hit something invisible and bounced away harmlessly. Connor had activated a personal shield device. Varathix had never seen human shield technology before. It was far more advanced than Zanari shields. Duke Sareth stared in shock. Then he laughed. "Kill the human first," he shouted. "He is unarmed and weak." Connor reached inside his formal jacket. When his hand came out, he was holding a sword. It was not a Zanari blade. It was a human weapon, long and curved. The metal was dark, almost black. It seemed to drink in the light. Connor held it with the ease of someone who had trained for years. "I am sorry," Connor said quietly to Varathix. "I hoped you would never have to see this." Then he moved again. What happened next would be talked about for generations. Connor attacked the assassins like nothing Varathix had ever witnessed. He was faster than Zanari warriors despite being smaller. His sword moved like it was alive, flowing from one attack to the next without pause. 5 assassins fell in seconds. They did not die, Varathix noticed. Connor's blade cut their weapons, struck their joints, disabled them. But he did not kill unless he had to. More assassins rushed forward. Connor used everything around him as a weapon. He kicked a fallen shield into one warrior's face. He used a pillar for cover and struck from the shadows. He moved so smoothly it looked like a dance. Varathix shook off her shock and joined the battle. She had trained all her life for combat. She was strong and skilled. But fighting beside Connor, she realized she was seeing a completely different style of warfare. Where she used power and the advantage of her 4 arms, Connor used speed and precision. Where she met force with force, Connor redirected his enemy's strength against them. Where she fought with passion, Connor fought with cold calculation. But they worked well together. Varathix began to read Connor's movements, and he seemed to understand hers. When she pushed an enemy off balance, Connor was there to finish them. When Connor disarmed a warrior, Varathix struck before they could recover. Together they held the platform. The Emperor was safe behind them. The loyal guards rallied and began fighting back. But most of the work was being done by Connor. 20 assassins fell to his blade. Then 30. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This was a human, the weakest species in the galaxy. But he was cutting through Zanari warriors like they were children. Duke Sarath finally understood that his plan was failing. He grabbed a plasma lance and stepped forward himself. He was a famous warrior, trained in the ancient combat arts. He had 4 arms and was twice Connor's size. "I will kill you myself, human," Sarath growled. Connor said nothing. He just stood ready, his dark sword held in a guard position. Sarath attacked with all 4 arms. The plasma lance could extend and strike from different angles. He used every technique he knew. The fight should have been over in seconds. It lasted 8 seconds. Connor moved like water, flowing around Sarath's attacks. He never tried to overpower the Duke. Instead, he waited for the perfect moment. When it came, Connor's sword moved once. Just once. Sarath's weapon fell from his hands. The Duke collapsed, alive but defeated. His legs had been cut just enough to disable him without killing. The battle was over. Palace reinforcements arrived to find the plaza secured. 37 conspirators were captured. The rest were dead or had fled. Connor stood among the fallen, his black sword dripping with blood. His formal robes were torn and stained. Then as quickly as the warrior had appeared, he seemed to transform back. Connor sheathed his sword and immediately turned to Verathix. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice full of concern. His eyes scanned her for injuries. Verathix looked down. She had a cut on her arm. She had not even noticed it during the battle. Connor pulled out a medical kit from inside his jacket. Where had he been hiding all this equipment? He began treating her wound with gentle hands, making soft, worried sounds. The deadly warrior was gone. The caring diplomat had returned, but Verathix could still see the warrior underneath. She would always see it now. The Emperor approached them. He was surrounded by guards, but he pushed through to stand before Connor. The Emperor was the most powerful being in the Zanari Empire. He bowed to no one. But now the Emperor bowed his head to Connor, just slightly, but it was unmistakable, a gesture of respect. "It seems we have misunderstood humanity," the Emperor said. Connor bowed much deeper. "With respect, Your Majesty, that was the intention." Verathix stared at her husband. The man she had thought was weak and harmless. The man she had pitied and dismissed. He had just saved her father's life and defeated an army. "Who are you?" she whispered. Connor met her eyes. She saw sadness there and regret, but also honesty. "I'm exactly who I've always been," Connor said. "A diplomat. A scholar. A man who wants peace, and a human." As guards led the prisoners away and medics helped the wounded, Verathix stood in the blood-stained plaza and realized that everything she knew about humans was wrong. Everything the galaxy knew about humans was wrong, and she needed to understand the truth. Verathix demanded a private meeting with Connor in their chambers. Guards stood outside the doors, doubled for security, but Verathix had ordered them to keep everyone out. She needed answers, and she needed them now. Connor sat calmly in a chair, still wearing his torn and bloody clothes. He looked tired but patient. He was waiting for her questions. Verathix did not know where to begin. There were too many questions. Finally, she asked the simplest one. Why did no one know that humans could fight like that? Connor was quiet for a moment. Then he began to explain. "When humanity joined the Galactic Union 15 years ago, we made a choice," he said. "We had just finished a terrible war. Not against aliens. Against ourselves. For thousands of years, humans fought each other. We had weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We had diseases designed to kill millions. We almost made our own planet unlivable." He paused, and Verathix saw real pain in his eyes. "When we finally achieved faster-than-light travel and met other species, we decided to change. We would present ourselves as peaceful. As diplomats and traitors. We would hide our military capabilities. We would never reveal what we truly were unless we had no other choice. But why?" Verathix asked. "If humans are so powerful, why hide it?" "Because we did not want to be feared," Connor said. "We wanted to be accepted. We wanted friends, not enemies. We had spent so long fighting that we were tired of war. We wanted something better." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "Every human you have met is trained in combat," Connor continued. "It is part of our culture, built into us by thousands of generations of warfare. But we are also taught control, discipline. We learn when to fight and when to walk away. and we almost always choose to walk away. Verathix felt her world shifting. Are you saying that every human ambassador, every human trader, every human in the galaxy is secretly a warrior? Yes, Connor said simply. Some more than others. But yes, he told her about his own past. Before becoming a diplomat, Connor had served in Earth's military for 8 years. He had been part of special operations, the humans who did the most dangerous and secret missions. He had been trained to fight in 6 different martial arts. He had served on 3 different worlds doing things he could not talk about. I retired from military service because I was tired of killing, Connor said quietly. I wanted to use my skills to prevent deaths, not cause them. So I became a diplomat. I learned languages and cultures. I tried to help different species understand each other. But the training never leaves. I never forgot how to fight. I just chose not to. Verathix sat down heavily. How many humans have you killed? She asked. Connor's face became very sad. Too many. That is why I wanted peace so badly. I know exactly what violence costs. There was silence for a long time. Verathix tried to process everything she was learning. Then another thought occurred to her. If what you say is true, then humanity could threaten the Zanari Empire, she said. Could humans defeat us in a war? Connor turned to look at her. His expression was serious. I hope we never find out, he said. A war between our species would be devastating for everyone. We do not want your empire. We do not want to conquer anyone. We want peaceful coexistence. But if we were forced to defend ourselves, yes, we would fight. And when humans fight, we fight to win. Verathix felt cold. The species her empire had dismissed as weak and harmless was actually incredibly dangerous. They had been hiding in plain sight, letting everyone underestimate them. Does my father know? She asked. He knows now, Connor said. After today, he understands. But I think he suspected. Your father is very intelligent. I believe he arranged our marriage not just for trade routes, but to ensure that humans remained allies instead of enemies. Verathix realized her father had been wiser than she knew. This marriage was not a punishment. It was one of the most important political moves in the Empire's history. But beyond all the politics, Verathix had to face something personal. She had treated Connor badly for months. She had looked down on him. She had thought he was weak and useless. She had dismissed everything he said and barely spoke to him, and he had endured it all with patience and kindness. He had never corrected her. He had never shown his true abilities. He had let her believe he was harmless. Why did you let me treat you that way? She asked. Why did you not tell me the truth? Connor's answer hurt more than she expected. Because I hoped that you would come to care for me even when you thought I was weak, he said. I wanted you to see me as a person, not as a species. I wanted you to value me for my mind, my kindness, my patience, not because you learned I could fight. Verathix felt ashamed. Connor had been testing her in a way, and she had failed that test. She had judged him entirely on his apparent physical weakness. She had never looked deeper. I am sorry, she said quietly. I know, Connor replied, and I forgive you. You were taught to value strength above everything. That is your culture. But I hope you can learn to see strength in different ways now. They talked for hours. Connor told her about Earth's history. He explained about the countless wars, the weapons of terrible destruction, the millions who died. But he also told her about the humans who chose peace, the philosophers and teachers who said there must be a better way, the leaders who finally brought humanity together. He told her about human martial arts, not just fighting techniques, but entire philosophies about discipline, respect, and self-control. About warriors who spent their lives learning how not to fight. The greatest warriors are the ones who never need to draw their swords, Connor said. That is what we believe. Violence should always be the last option. Verathix began to understand. Humans were not peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they knew exactly how terrible violence could be. They had experienced it for thousands of years, and they had finally chosen a different path. What happens now? She asked. The secret is out. My father knows. Soon the whole empire will know. The galaxy will learn that humanity has been hiding its true nature. That depends on your people, Connor said. We would prefer to continue as we have been. Being underestimated keeps us safe. But if the galaxy now sees us as a threat, we will adapt. We always do. Verathix made a decision. I will speak to my father. I will recommend that the Zanari keep your secret. It benefits both our peoples to have humans as quiet allies. Connor looked relieved. Thank you. But personally, Varathix continued, everything has changed between us. I cannot pretend I do not know who you really are. I need to truly understand humanity. Will you teach me? Connor smiled. Only if you can accept all of me. Not just the warrior. Not just the diplomat. All of it together. Can you do that? Varathix looked at her husband. Really looked at him. She saw the scholar who loved books. The kind man who befriended servants. The patient diplomat who solved problems with words. The deadly warrior who had saved her father. The complex person who was all of these things at once. It was confusing and complicated. But for the first time, it was also real. I can try, she said. Connor stood and crossed the room to her. He took her hands in his. His hands were gentle, but she could now see the calluses she had missed before. The small scars, the signs of training. That is all I ask, he said. For the first time since their wedding, Varathix truly wanted to know her husband. Not out of duty, but out of genuine interest. Who was this human who could be so many contradictory things at once? She was about to find out. The weeks following the assassination attempt changed everything. The conspiracy was crushed. Duke Sereth and his allies were executed. 12 noble houses lost their titles and lands. The Emperor's throne was secure again. But the real change was in how the Zanari saw humans. Connor's actions at the Festival of Stars became legendary. The story spread through the Empire. The human who fought like a demon. The diplomat who saved the Emperor. The warrior hiding in plain sight. The Emperor called a private council. He invited his most trusted advisors, along with Varathix and Connor. They met in a secure chamber where no one could overhear. Let us speak plainly, the Emperor said. We have been watching humanity for years. We noticed things that did not make sense. Diplomatic ships with military engines. Ambassadors who moved like trained fighters. Trade stations with weapons hidden in their structures. We suspected humans were not what they appeared to be. Connor nodded. You were right to be suspicious, a military advisor spoke up. Our intelligence suggests that Earth's solar system has defense satellites capable of destroying invasion fleets. That every human colony is actually a military base in disguise. That humanity has been preparing for war while pretending to want peace. That is partially true, Connor admitted. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. We want peace, but we will defend ourselves if attacked. Every human learns to fight, but we prefer not to. We hide our strength because showing it would make us seem like a threat. The Emperor leaned forward. I propose a formal alliance. Not public, but real. Humanity shares its technology with the Zanari military. We conduct joint training. We create a mutual defense agreement. If either of our peoples is attacked, the other will help. Connor was quiet for a moment. I must take this proposal to Earth's government. But I believe they will agree. Humans want strong allies, and the Zanari, despite your pride, are honorable people. Then it is settled, the Emperor said. We will wait for Earth's response. But let us keep humanity's secret. It serves both our peoples to let the galaxy continue underestimating humans. Varathix felt relief. Her two peoples would be allies, not enemies. The marriage that had seemed like a punishment was now revealed as a gift. In the weeks that followed, Varathix began to truly know her husband. Connor taught her about Earth. He showed her human art and music. He shared human poetry and stories. He explained the complex history of his people. Varathix was fascinated. Humans were full of contradictions. They were violent but also gentle. They were proud but also humble. They created beautiful art but also terrible weapons. They were capable of great cruelty but also great kindness. How can you be so many opposite things at once? She asked Connor one day. He smiled. That is what makes us human. We contain multitudes. We are not simple. We embrace complexity instead of running from it. Varathix asked to learn Connor's fighting style. At first he was hesitant. He did not want their relationship to be about violence. But she insisted. As a warrior herself, she wanted to understand this part of him. So Connor began teaching her. They practiced in the private training room with wooden swords. The style was called kenjutsu, an ancient human art of sword fighting. The training was unlike anything Varathix had experienced. It was not just about strength or speed. It was about reading your opponent, predicting their moves, using their own force against them, finding economy in motion, doing only what was necessary. Fighting is not about dominating your enemy, Connor explained. It is about controlling yourself. Your fear, your anger, your pride, master yourself and you master the fight. As they trained together, their relationship deepened. The training sessions were intense but also intimate. They learned each other's rhythms. They began to move together naturally, like partners in a dance. Verathix found herself attracted to Connor in a way she had never been before. Not because he was strong, though he was. Not because he was a warrior, though he was that too. But because he was complex and interesting, because he challenged her assumptions, because he treated her as an equal. One evening after training, they sat together in the garden. Verathix's muscles ached, but it was a good ache. She felt alive. "I need to tell you something," she said. "When we first married, I thought you were beneath me. I looked down on you. I was ashamed to be married to a human." Connor nodded. "I know, but I was wrong," Verathix continued. "Not just about you. About everything. I judged you by the wrong standards. I valued only physical strength and combat skill. I missed everything else that makes a person valuable." "You learned," Connor said simply. "That is what matters. You were willing to change your mind when shown new evidence. Many people cannot do that. Do you forgive me?" Verathix asked. "I already have," Connor said. He took her hand. "You are not the same person you were on our wedding day. Neither am I. We have both changed. We have grown together. That is what a good relationship does." Verathix felt something warm in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize the feeling. She was falling in love with her husband. News arrived that pirates were raiding the outer territories. The Zanari fleet was having trouble stopping them. The pirates used hit-and-run tactics, striking quickly and disappearing before reinforcements arrived. The Emperor decided to test the new alliance. He invited human ships to join a task force against the pirates. Verathix volunteered to join the mission. Connor would go too as part of the human contingent. 2 human ships arrived. They were smaller than Zanari warships, black as space and almost invisible to sensors. The Zanari crews were impressed by the technology. The human commander was a woman named Captain Linda Hayes. She was professional and competent. She coordinated with the Zanari admiral efficiently. The mission was a success. The human ships tracked the pirates to their asteroid base. Human strike teams infiltrated the pirate command ship, while the Zanari fleet engaged the pirate fleet directly. Verathix watched through cameras as Connor led his team through the pirate ship. The humans moved like ghosts, silent and deadly. They cleared the ship in 20 minutes. The pirate fleet surrendered. 0 human casualties. Minimal Zanari casualties. Complete victory. The Zanari admiral admitted grudgingly that humans knew what they were doing. Captain Hayes accepted the compliment gracefully and noted that the Zanari firepower had made the operation possible. It was a true partnership. When Verathix and Connor returned to the palace, they were greeted as heroes. The successful mission had proven the value of the human alliance. The Emperor announced a formal partnership agreement, carefully worded to avoid revealing human military capabilities to the wider galaxy. Life settled into a new rhythm. Connor continued his diplomatic work, but now with real respect from the court. Nobles sought his advice. His insights were valued. He was no longer dismissed as weak. But in private, with Verathix, he was still the gentleman who read poetry and practiced Tai Chi in the gardens. The warrior side of him only emerged when necessary. The rest of the time, he was a scholar and a peacemaker. 6 months after the Festival of Stars, Verathix discovered she was pregnant. The baby would be the first human-Zanari hybrid. Doctors were amazed that the 2 species were genetically compatible. Connor was overjoyed. He placed his hand on her belly and talked about their daughter, for the doctors said it would be a girl. Verathix felt a fierce love for both her husband and their unborn child. One evening they stood together on the balcony of their chambers, looking out at the city. The 3 suns were setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. "I have been thinking," Verathix said. "When our daughter is born, how should we raise her? As a Zanari warrior? As a human diplomat? Both?" "Both," Connor said firmly. "We will teach her the best of both our peoples. Zanari strength and human subtlety. Zanari pride and human humility. She will be unique, belonging to both worlds." "She will be powerful," Verathix said. "She will be wise," Connor corrected. "Power without wisdom is dangerous. We will teach her when to fight and when to seek peace, when to show her strength and when to hide it. She will know that true strength is choosing peace when you have the power to wage war." Verathix leaned against her husband. She thought about how far they had come. from a political marriage between strangers to genuine love, from misunderstanding to true partnership. "I love you," she said. It was the first time she had said those words. Connor smiled. "I have loved you for a long time. I was just waiting for you to see me." They kissed as the sun set behind them. Two warriors from different worlds, who had chosen love over conflict, understanding over assumption, and partnership over pride. In the months that followed, Verathix served as an ambassador to Earth. She walked through human cities and met people from all walks of life. She saw the full spectrum of humanity, good and bad, simple and complex. She gave a speech to the Galactic Union about learning from different cultures. She spoke about how assumptions blind us to truth, how the most powerful beings are those who choose peace despite their capacity for war. She never revealed humanity's military secrets, but her words changed how people thought about humans. When their daughter was born, they named her Kira. She had her mother's crystalline skin but her father's green eyes. She had 4 arms like a Zanari but human grace. She was beautiful and perfect,